whether you have version 1 or version 2, you should have had journal entries like that. So look down through your journal entry problems you had and see your answer. Remember, I'm circling the number of points that you have missed, not the number of points that you got right. And then on the back page, I'm subtracting those points from the points available. So an investor contributes cash for common stock. We've seen that before. They take out a bank loan. That would really be a note payable. Some of you put account payable. I don't really count off for that. To get the points for the line or the problems, you typically had to get both the debit and the credit in the correct order and the amount. On some of these that were adjusting entries, I gave separate points for the journal entries and for the amount. Any questions on those journal entries? The last three were adjusting journal entries. E, F, and G were all adjusting journal entries. E? Okay. So, on December 31st, the company began the year with $300 in the supply account. So, in our supply account, we began with a $300 debit balance because supplies are assets. The company began the year with $300. They have one purchase that was related to the purchase above in D. Well, in D, we debited supplies for $2,000, credited accounts payable for another $2,000 in supplies. At the end of the period, after we count up all of our inventory, we see that there's only $500 remaining in the ending balance. Well, you can't get from a $2,300 debit balance to a $500 debit balance by continuing to debit supply account. So your adjusting entry must involve this credit for $1,800 to supplies. Does that make sense? So we're going to recognize the expense at the end of the month in our adjusting entries right before we prepare financial statements. Otherwise, we'll be overstating our assets. We really don't have $2,300 worth of assets. We have $500. And until I make this adjusting journal entry, as you see on the board, and post it, until it gets posted to that account, the balance isn't at 500, which is what it should be. This is what they counted. So you have to do that to update your supply account and also to correctly state your expenses. Otherwise, you'll be leaving off some expenses as well. Questions on this problem? So let's go look at the next one then. The next one we had, again, I'm working from version 2. The next one we had dealt with the income statement. I'm sorry, statement of stockholders' equity. So I was looking for something along this line. And the closer you got to that, the more points you got, basically. So again, you should have had a heading. And again, it was about 3 points for your heading, which should have all been give me points. Then for each line, about 3 points for each line, save the last line, except the last line. And about another 2 points in there for format. If you had retained earnings and you had common stock instead of contributed capital, that's fine. You could have contributed capital and earned capital, that would be fine. We saw examples of both in the textbook. But this is very similar to the one that we had on the D2L page. So I'll walk you through it. We had that Excel spreadsheet. Any questions on your statement of stockholders' equity? Now, for a few, if you just really messed something up, since I was grading this horizontally, I thought, well, how about if I graded this vertically? This is 5, 10, 50. Is there any way that they would have less points? So for 1 or 2 in here, I may have counted yours, I may have graded yours differently if it cost you less points. Again, once you give me what you give me, if there are mistakes, and I'm trying to think, is there another way I can assess this that may not cost you as many points, but still fair to everybody else in the class? So I did evaluate that. Common stock would only affect this contributed capital account. And then retained earnings is affected by your net income and dividends. Net income increases, dividend reduces. And so this ending number, this would be the total equity number on our balance sheet. that we'll be reporting. We also have a contributed capital, or common stock, and a retained earnings. Those two numbers will also show up in your equity section of your balance sheet. We're going to have to do this before we prepare a balance sheet. Any questions on the statement of stockholders' equity? Again, if you just put down a date, if you just put December 31st, or didn't put a heading, I had to count off points for that. Any questions on that problem? All right, and then the last point that we had dealt with the statement of cash flows. It was a very simple format. I think looking over that in class before you actually did that probably even made it easier for you. So the name of the company, the name of the statement, the period of time. Again, just about 2 points per line on that. So operating, investing, and financing, they should have been in that order. If not, I may have deducted some points for format. The change in cash, cash at the beginning of the year equals the cash at the end of the year. Questions about any of the problems that you looked at? As I do in all the tests, I ran an item analysis of the multiple choice to see what was most commonly missed in the sections. I really look at something if over half the class misses a multiple choice question. The assessment usually works like this. Did I talk about this in class? Did I discuss this in class? Is this something they should have had from the reading? Or if it's a big large enough number, I just have to make the assessment that, you know, Joe, you didn't do your job. You didn't stress that enough. That's a me issue, not a you issue. And so in that case, I added points back. And so again, after looking at those, evaluating those for both classes, added 5 points back for the multiple choice. Any questions? If you see any grading issues, please let me know on that. I want to know if I counted off for something I shouldn't have. So right now, you should be adding back the points on the back page, make sure it adds up. And remember, where I've circled points, those are the number of points you missed, and you'll subtract those from what was available on that back page to see if the math works still. Again, I would really appreciate it if you would double check me now. I don't want to get a call sometime in the summer about exam 2. That's really not the way we ought to handle that. Any questions about the exam? What do you think exam 3 is going to look like?
Probably similar.
What do you think exam 3 is going to look like? Exam 1 and exam 2 with 125 points, 200 points. I don't know the number of problems yet. We'll talk about that at the end of class. That was what we agreed to, right? But it'll be the same format. You know, you're not going to have all essay questions. It's not going to be anything new. It's going to be the same thing you saw for exam 1 and exam 2. It will be because I believe that most of you would like to drop at least one exam score and replace it with a higher following exam score. And so if it is comprehensive, we can do that. Sound good?
And you have to replace it, you can't put it in.
Yes, so in other words, since the following is the only one that is comprehensive, it's the only one that can replace another exam. So the following, whatever you earn on it, you get, but if it's higher than exam 1 or exam 2, you can replace one of those two with the following grade. Questions about the exam? Again, if you want to look at these again, you're more than welcome to come by the office. Again, I'm happy to meet with you before class or after class. I'd rather be with you before class than after class because it's awful late getting out of here at 9:30 and getting home. I know y'all guys have to drive. I don't live in Murfreesboro either, so I have a pretty good drive in front of me as well every time we pack up and head in. Any questions about the test?
If we want background, so you know you
What now?
we took the exam straight and we want to get in those and we let you know.
I'll just compare it. So let's say you make a 94 on the final, and let's say you had a 75 on the first one and an 85 on the second one. Well, the 75 would go away and you have a 94 on the first exam, the 80, whatever it was, I said on the second, and a 94 on the final. So again, just understand that the final has more points on it. So it's going to kind of look funny. There's 125 points on that. So whatever percentage, if you're at 95% of those 125, that's what you're getting. It's not the raw points. You may make 100 on the final, but if it's out of 125 points, that's not 100%. So don't let that throw you when you're looking at that on D2F. When the following is out of 125 points, this one's only, the other two exams only got 100 points. So whatever percentage you make on the following, that's the same percent. You receive on exam 1 or 2, whichever is lower. If there are no further questions, if you would pass your exams down in the row, again, you can pass them face up, because I don't need you to share your grades with everybody, anybody you don't want to. If I've misgraded something, if something looks incorrect on that to you, please let me know. And again, we'll address that. We'll talk. We'll talk about the file. Thank you. Do you have all the exams?